John Grant, born April 12, 1961, in Ida, Oklahoma. He was one of nine children, and his father was not present during his childhood. Grant and his siblings grew up in abject poverty. He said he was raised by his 6 year old sister at the time, and he stole to provide for his siblings. Grant's first prison stint occurred in the 1970s when he was between 11 and 12 years old. He said he lost contact when he was 15 years old, and then there was rampant child abuse, and the justice system in Oklahoma at that time in a 1981 television show revealed it. So, as a teen and a young adult, Grant served multiple sentences in prison and jails. A psychiatrist who testified on Grant's behalf during his clemency hearings diagnosed Grant with a reactive attachment disorder due to his traumatic childhood. At the time of the murder for which Grant was executed, he had been imprisoned at the Dick Corner Correctional Center in Homney, Oklahoma, since December 30th, 1980. He was 19 years old. He was serving a 130-year sentence for four separate armed robbery convictions and has served approximately 18 of those years at the time of the murder. Yo, you wasn't gonna make it out alive. 130 years? Bruh, you be a mummy by the time you get out. Grant had also served time at the same prison on an earlier occasion, during which he had been employed in the prison kitchen and New Carter. Due to the fighting with another inmate, John lost his job. Both on the morning before the murder and the morning of the murder, November 13th, 1998, John and Carter had argued over John's breakfast tray. During both of these arguments, two inmates who worked in the prison dining overheard Grant threatening Carter. After the last argument, the two inmates saw Grant loitering near the storage closet containing cleaning supplies. Soon afterwards, Carter walked by that closet, at which point John grabbed her and pulled her into the closet. While in the closet, John stabbed Carter in the chest with a prison made shank. After a correctional officer arrived to help Carter, Grant fled and attempted to stab himself with a shank. Fleed where? Where's he gonna go? Prison officials soon subdued Grant. Meanwhile, medical personnel attempted to aid Carter, who had stopped breathing. She was pronounced dead at the hospital, with her cause of death being 16 stab wounds, one of which punctured her aorta and caused rapid blood loss and death. Grant was convicted of Carter's murder and sentenced to death on May 8th, 2000. So they don't know. He hasn't revealed how this relationship with this woman happened. They're just, that's weird. John made several appeals for a commutation of his sentence to life without parole prior to his execution. In 2014, was unanimously rejected after John's attorney claimed that his murder of Carter was motivated by an alleged romantic relationship he had with her. The victim's daughter, Pam Carter, called the allegation heinous, stating, "I lost my mother, and now I feel victimized all over again." John's final appeal of Oklahoma's Pardons and Paroles Board in early October 2021, weeks before his death. This time, Grant's attorney focused on his troubled upbringing and extensive prison history. John's attorney also insisted that John was remorseful for Carter's murder. Oklahoma officials countered by stating that John's conviction and sentence have been upheld by numerous courts. They also mentioned in 2005 incident in which Grant assaulted a fellow death row inmate who secretly required stitches, as well as two incidents in 2008 and 2009 where he threatened correction officials. The board rejected Grant's second clemency appeal by a 3-2 vote. Listen, I guess this man says I ain't got nothing to lose, so he acting up. And then he expects his appeals to go through. I don't think so. On October 28th, 2021, at 3:15 p.m., approximately 45 minutes before John's scheduled execution time, an international report claimed that John was observed hurried, eating and drinking a large amount of potato chips and soda. A restraint team took him to get a shower, after which he was escorted to the execution chamber. John's execution began approximately at 4 o'clock p.m. Eyewitnesses' accounts of what happened during Grant's execution varied. Grant reportedly shouted, "Let's go, let's go, let's go," from behind a curtain. Afterwards, the curtain was raised, at which point Grant shouted a stream of profanities. Wow, he just seems impatient, like he's in a hurry to die. Witnesses argued that after the first drug, midazolam, was administered, Grant began convulsing and vomiting. Oh! Several minutes after Grant began vomiting, two members of the execution team wiped the vomit from his face and neck. Sean Murphy, a reporter with the Associated Press who had witnessed 14 lethal injections at the time of John, stated that John began to convulse pretty hard. I would say that, and then vomiting about a minute later. Murphy described John's convulsions as full body and pretty violent, stating that John continued to breathe until 1 minute after the second drug began flowing. Murphy said, "I've never seen an inmate vomit. I've witnessed about 14 executions, and I've never witnessed that before." John requested that a public defender named Julie Garner attend his execution. Garner, who had seen 6 executions prior, told reporters that Grant's execution was the first she had seen where midazolam was used. She called the execution horrifying and stated that it looked peaceful at first, but Grant began struggling to breathe, gasping for breath, and struggling to raise a shoulder from the gurney. 7 minutes after the medazole was administered, Gardner stated it appeared like he was drowning in his own vomit. Another one of Grant's requested witnesses, public defender Megan, also reported that Grant struggled to breathe and gasped for air during the execution and that his back arched off of the gurney at one point. Megan claimed that John's breathing did not calm until more than 6 minutes into the execution process. Grant was pronounced dead 21 minutes after he was first administered midazolam. Michael, a retired Associated Press reporter who has covered executions for the administration on a freelance basis, had witnessed the death penalty being carried out about 450 times. Damn, that's how many people died. He said that he could not recall one instance of someone vomiting while being put to death. Ooh. Mm-mm-mm. Several Oklahoma officials who witnessed the execution contested the graphic press accounts of Grant's execution. Scott Crow, the director of the Oklahoma Department of Corrections, said the news conference of that day after the execution, contrary to the reports of Grant convulsing and breathing, Grant began snoring slightly, seconds after being administered mendolizol, Crow said. There's different opinions as to what occurred next. There's some that have indicated that Grant dry heaved 2 dozen times. From my vantage point, I didn't see that, Crow stated that there were no instances of any unusual behavior throughout the drug protocol. On the other regulation, Crow accused reporters of publishing embezzled accounts in Grant's execution and declared that the Department of Corrections was not planning on new changes to the protocols in response to Grant's execution. So you're saying that three different people who said the same thing but in different ways is lying. So you have a public defender, okay? You have what it says, another public defender and a reporter, all saying the same thing but in different ways from what they experienced, and you call them liars. I believe these three people because ain't no way nobody's gonna lie about that. That's nothing to lie about. Like, y'all administered this man 14 bullshits in his veins, and y'all expect this man not to convulse? And they're only talking about one drug here, not the other 13. Oklahoma pain anesthesiologist Dr. Irvin Yang to observe the execution from a separate witness room behind the media. Yang stated that Grant's execution had been smooth and occurred without errors, and that Grant appeared to have an unconscious and incapable of feeling of pain between 30 and 45 seconds after receiving a dose of midazolam. I don't even know how to say that word. I think I've been saying it wrong. Midazolam. Yin claimed that the midazolam alone was like Grant's cause of death. They paid you. More likely, they paid you to say that. Anyhow, we move along. So, in February of 2022, results from Grant's autopsy were made public, the findings which were recorded the day after Grant's execution and finalized. On January 24, 2022, largely corroborated with media witnesses that stated during Grant's physical reaction to the lethal injection drugs, Dr. Jeremy Shelton of the Oklahoma State Medical Examiner's Office found that Grant had inhaled vomit into his airway. See, that's what I'm saying. Like they just want to lie, trying to make themselves look good. Because it also showed that Grant's lungs were heavy with fluid that he likely experienced flashing pulmonary edema as liquid quickly built up in his lungs, giving Grant a feeling akin to suffocation or drowning. Lethal injection experts have likened the sensation to waterboarding, a form of torture, and described it as drowning, asphyxia, and terror. John's lungs were 1390 grams at the time of the autopsy, more than 3 times the weight of an average human lung, and he suffered muscular bleeding of his tongue, a common phenomenon found in victims of drowning and asphyxiation. After the execution, Ronald Dunn, the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, criticized DOC Director Crow for accusing reporters of exaggerating what happened during the execution, stating when self interest public officials deny reality, it further undermines public confidence in everything they do. When it comes to capital punishment, it suggests that Oklahoma can't be trusted with the death penalty. If they're not willing to tell the truth about things that neutral, objective reporters have seen with their own eyes, then what else aren't they telling the truth about? See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I knew these three people weren't lying. It's three people against you and a so-called person you paid to lie to corroborate your story. Yo, I don't know if this man, Mr. Crow, got fired. He needs to get fired, or he needs to do, maybe he should get some lethal injection to see how it feels. Oh, Lord Jesus. The autopsy confirmed you lied, bitch. Next.